Hello again, Chris Lee of Southeastern 16, joined by Max Barr and Blake Lovell. We're here to preview a Sweet 16 matchup between BYU and Alabama. You can catch that 6:09, I believe that's Central on CBS. It's in the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. Alabama about a 5.5-point favorite as we do this on Tuesday morning. Max Barr, throw it to you first. Should be a very fascinating matchup between two teams that like to score a lot of points.
Yeah, this is the highest total of the Sweet 16, up at 175.5 points. Woo! If you like scoring, if you like points, tune in. Looking at the VSiN numbers here for the spread, we have it Alabama as a 5.5-point favorite. 62% of the bets, 76% of the handle. So there's some pretty solid, sharp money coming in on the Tide. You'd think the public see BYU playing real hot, ended Big 12 play real strong. You would think that plus 5.5 would be pretty enticing. Not the case here with the Tide receiving almost 80% of the handle so far.
I love this note from the VSiN preview on this this thing. All right, tell me if you've heard this before. Okay, here's the sentence. Are you ready? BYU looks for dunks, layups, and triples. Huh?
Wow.
Who does that sound like?
I don't know.
Listen, sign me up. I ranked this in the Sweet 16 game rankings we did. I think I had this second behind the All SEC matchup. Give me all the offense you can get in this game. I think that's fully what we're going to get between these two. You've got two great offensive minds here in these two head coaches. And I just think with Nate Oates, Kevin Young, what they do offensively is so fun to watch. And right now, I don't think you could ask for a better matchup because they're both, playing pretty well from an offensive standpoint. I know people picked on Alabama a little bit for, maybe the opening round game against Robert Morris and all that, but I think you're still looking at an Alabama team that is built to keep advancing in this tournament, but they run into a BYU team that if they get going from three, look out because they can put up some points, and I think to beat Alabama, I don't think you're going to have a lot of teams that did what Ole Miss did, and that's just completely shut them down, turn them over 20-something times or whatever. I think you got to outscore them, and BYU happens to be a team that may be able to outscore them.
Yeah, they got Richie Saunders and a lot of other guys who can really score. I mean, the matchup similarities in the way they play are very exact in a lot of ways. The other thing about BYU, guys, this team is red hot coming into the tournament. Since losing February the 8th at Cincinnati, BYU's lost exactly once. That was to Houston in the Big 12 tournament, in a Houston team that could be a matchup problem for anybody. Where do we think that BYU could be a matchup problem for Alabama? I'll start with you, Max.
I don't know if I would call it a matchup problem. I would call it something that BYU does extremely well, and I think they even might have the advantage in this area in this matchup, and that's rebounding. BYU, we all talk about the offense, the shooting. Guys, this is awesome. We have two of the top 6 2-point offenses in the nation in terms of 2-point percentage, both right at near 60%, which is just bananas. But rebounding, when you talk about BYU, you don't normally think dominant physical team in years past. Kabakita, the Utah transfer, is one of the best rebounders in the nation. And then do not be fooled by 6'7" next to Fus Traore. He is a boulder of a human being, just a monster. Okay, he's wider than he is tall. So, Chris, to answer your question, what am I looking for?
You're excited about that, aren't you?
These guys rebound. I'm telling you, they are so sneaky with their physicality, BYU. I think that's going to be the area of the matchup that kind of surprises SEC fans as they watch this. Like, whoa, BYU can bang down low. And I didn't really expect that. Well, you should expect it.
So you're telling me this needs to be a Big Cliff, Mo D game for the Tide. These guys need to step up and make big plays. Well, I've seen that before with them too, and I think defensively it's going to be important too because like we said, not just from the rebounding perspective, but knowing that BYU is either going to take that open three or they're going to try to attack and get something at the rim. That's where we always mention, like, you have to go just beyond the blocks and all that stuff with those two guys in particular. It's just the fact that when they put their hands up, how many times we've seen it this season where it's just like somebody goes and tries to score around the rim, and all of a sudden you see a big Cliff arm or a Mo D arm just go up, and it just completely impacts the shot. Even if they don't get a block or anything like that, just their being in there impacts the way that other team can score the ball. And so I think, again, and it goes into what you just mentioned, the rebounding. The plays around the rim, like we're all going to fall in love with the three here. And, BYU is going to shoot a ton of them. Alabama will probably shoot quite a few, as we know. But I think maybe where this game is won is legitimately 2 feet within the rim when it comes to either the shots that are impacted on drives or the rebounding aspect that Max just mentioned.
For Alabama, I think those are interesting keys. Mark Sear is obviously a key. When he's on, he's as good as anybody in the country. His performance this year has been a little bit more uneven than it's been in the past. And I'm looking like his scoring doesn't always correlate to them winning and losing. He scored 30 when they lost to Florida, scored 24 when they lost to Tennessee back in early March. But still, this guy, I feel like a lot of times when Mark Sears is playing at the top of his game, they're unusually tough to beat. Anything else that you're watching from an Alabama standpoint?
From an Alabama standpoint, I think I go to the perimeter defense. So while these teams play very similar offensively, defensively, the scheme is completely different. When you filter the numbers for just conference play numbers, and you look at 3-point attempts, 3-point attempt rate, how often is the opponent getting off a three compared to their other field goal attempts? Alabama, number 1 in the SEC in limiting 3-point attempts. BYU, 15th in the Big 12 in 3-point attempts. So Alabama has made a concerted effort. We're running you off the 3-point line. Number 1 least 3-point attempt rate in the SEC. And then BYU, kind of the opposite. We're going to give you the 3, and we're going to make life hell in and around the rim. 13th in the Big 12 in points from 2, number 1 in opponent points from 3. So completely different schemes defensively. I think that's going to be pretty interesting. Alabama taking away the 3, BYU taking away the 2.
Well, I mean, I think if you're looking at it, again, we've said this year, Alabama, one of the differences between this year's team and last year's team is they just don't shoot it as well from 3. You play some of the percentages we've seen, even just take the last 5 games, right? 7 of 17 against St. Mary's, didn't shoot a ton. 6 of 21 against Robert Morris, 29%. 11 of 35 against Florida, 31%. 11 of 29 against Kentucky, 38%. And then 32%, 7 of 22 against Auburn. So it's like they're not shooting it at the same rate. Last year they finished the top 23-point team. And so, like, I'm curious what we know, right? Like, we've seen the Mississippi State game where they just can go completely off 22 of 45 or whatever. Obviously, that's an extreme example this year, but it's Alabama. I mean, I don't know if there is such thing as an extreme example when it comes to this team and shooting the 3. Like, they can all be extreme ones, like 17 to 29 against Texas, 15 to 31 against Mississippi State again. South Dakota State, 19 of 55. It's like, this is just one of those where, like you said, Max, if it's BYU and you're game planning, is this going to be a game where Alabama shoots 45? And, hopefully they only make 10, but what if they make 20, right? It's just, I mean, that's Alabama. And so it is kind of a fascinating approach here to see how they go about guarding them. But for the other reasons you mentioned, with Alabama, in terms of how they're going to defend, you're telling me that Alabama's going to try to run some people in there to Big Cliff and Mo D? Oh, my. That could be a good thing for the Tide. So,
now here's an interesting stat. 45.2% is the ratio of 3-point field goal attempts to field goal attempts that BYU allows. That's 340 in the country. BYU is 248th in 3-point field goal percentage defense. That's a lot of shots teams are getting up and a pretty big success rate they're hitting at. Now, look, the fact that BYU's won that many games tells you how good the offense is, but that's interesting, guys.
Texas Tech set the record for what, 3-point attempts? Is there a chance Alabama breaks the record in this game? Is that possible, do we think? Like, could that happen? Always a possibility with Alabama, but something to consider here.
Yeah. Are we ready for picks?
I think so. So we said, when you compare to last season on the full season numbers, Alabama's not as good as a shooting team as last year. There's no debate in that. But when you just filter for only conference play, Alabama finished second in the SEC in 3-point shooting percentage, 37.9% in SEC play. That's actually a better percentage than BYU shot in Big 12 play. So I would listen to the argument that you could say, hey, BYU is a really good 3-point shooting team on the full year, but at the toughest competition in conference play, Alabama was the better 3-point shooting team. And I think Alabama has the better perimeter defense and scheme to take away BYU's high volume 3-point attack. I think this is a game that a lot of Alabama fans are really worried with how BYU has been hot lately. I could get torched on this take, but I feel very confident in Alabama. I think this is a great matchup for them. I think Alabama kind of runs with this one.
Yeah, there's some variability here just between all the 3-point shots that are going to go off and whether it's your day or whether it's your not. But I usually go with upside. And with Alabama, I get that they didn't quite have the season that people expected when a lot of people thought they were the best team in the country. And Blake noted the stuff about the 3-point shots. But, guys, bottom line, and BYU had a really good season too. Won a lot of games in a really good league. But upside won out for Alabama 30 or 35 times it's played this year. I'm going with the Tide because of that.
Alabama played the toughest schedule in the country. They obviously played in some high-scoring games. Like I said, I think the teams that were able to beat them regularly are the teams that just found a way to outscore them. I think BYU fits that criteria. And, I still don't think about the idea that, Nate Oates has been here before. And we've seen what he's been able to do with his team. And he just always seems to push the right buttons when it comes to just being able to put them in a position to have this kind of success. And, obviously last year that culminated in the Final Four. This year, now, first couple games, people will, again, pick on him for only winning by 9, and they eventually pulled away from St. Mary's. But I just think, like I said, BYU is a team that you probably are going to have to outscore Alabama. I think they have enough to be able to do that. But I just, like you mentioned, both of you guys, like it's just, I've seen Alabama in this spot before, and sure, could this be Missouri 110-98? I don't know. But I just tend to think that they, with Mark Sears specifically, find a way to score a few more points here, and get the win. So I'm going to pick Alabama too. Michael, all the noted Alabama fans out there, you know what just happened.
Oh boy,
we won't say it. You know what just happened. But hey, here we go.
We're going to enjoy watching it, and to add to your NCAA tournament enjoyment, Blake, BRACKETBIDS can help you with that too.
BRACKETBIDS, hope you're enjoying the free pick'em contest, the auction draft league over there. Check out what they're all about. Download the BRACKETBIDS app or visit them at bracketbids.com. Lots of fun stuff going on over there. We appreciate all their support here over the past couple months on the channel.
All right. I'm Chris Lee for Southeastern 16, along with Max Barr, Blake Lovell. Thanks for watching. God bless you. We'll be back with more SEC Hoops content here at Southeastern 16 soon.